In this video, I'm going to make a SketchUp model from this Sanborn map. The model is going to be for the Container Corporation of America, which was on the Chicago River along Ogden Avenue. That made cardboard boxes. There isn't anything there except a brownfield site right now with some concrete poured here and there and some looks like the floors of the shells of the buildings. I would gather that back in the steam era, when they were making paper boxes here, they simply dumped all their wastewater directly into the river, and you can imagine how nice rotting paper pulp smelled like. But it probably wasn't as bad as what was right next door, which was the glue works. And the glue works was there because right next door to the glue works was the tannery. So no doubt the tannery sent to the glue works all the hides that weren't worth making into leather. And both of those industries would dump their effluent into the river as well. And all up and down the river in this particular area was more of the same. It was not what you call the sweet smells of spring. Anyhow, this is a very large model. It's, I think it's probably more than 200 meters across and maybe 200 meters up and down on this diagram. So it's covering a very large bit of territory. And so I know that this is not going to work out as a single model, that it will have to be multiple models, and I've given some thought to that, and I've already marked where I'm going to divide them up. It's going to be pretty much like this. One model here in this quadrant over here in the upper right, the second one, lower right is the third one. And to make sure I position all these together, I will build it in SketchUp as a single model and keep it as a single model while I'm going through a substantial part of the construction. And then at some point in time, probably when the poly count gets to be fairly high, then I'll actually divide up the models, and I have a way of precisely placing them in the route relative to each other, and I'll cover that at an appropriate time. But to get started, what one has to do is, of course, where do you begin? And so for me, that's picking a place I call the center point. It doesn't have to be the center. Actually, it's probably, I should call it the starting point rather than the center point. But I've got that right here in this purple area. I picked a corner that had the following characteristics. I could go on a straight line from that corner to the corner of an adjacent building. So I knew marking out the 65 feet between these two corners, I could get the corners to line up, and that would allow me to make sure everything about these two buildings were going to be positioned properly relative to each other. And running over in this direction, it's 95 feet. It didn't quite hit the corner down here. It's about 8 feet off, but it's good enough. I can go over 95 feet and come down 8 and go from there. So having positioned my starting point, I can then take a look and say, well, in which direction am I going to be going? And I've decided that what I want to do for what's on camera is put together some portion of this model that's in the A quadrant over here, because it seems to be fairly simple, and I can show you just in a few steps how I get started, and then I can turn the camera off and do the rest of the foundations and such stuff that you don't need to see me do every single step. So without further ado, I want to zoom this in a little bit so I can see my dimensions better. And then I'm going to bring up SketchUp. Like I said, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go to the left. So here in SketchUp, I'm going to go from my center point, I'm going to go over 95 feet, down 8, and that gives me the relationship between the two corners. I'll come back here, I take a look at what have I got from here, this corner, all the way across. I know I measured that here. It is 310 feet, and going up it's 205 feet. So I just need to come back here and go 310 feet, 205 feet, 310, and down again. And so that gives me, you know, the footprint for that first building. On this, from the center point, I can go back here and say it's 65 feet up to the next corner, and so I can draw that in here too. 65 feet. And so basically from here on out, for a little while anyhow, it's just a matter of going back and forth between the diagram of the from the Sanborn map and Sketchup, transcribing the dimensions as you go. So, you know, here in this corner, 60 by 75, so it's up 60 over 75, and so on. All right, so I'm going to shut the camera down and finish the work and come back when I've got more to show you. One question I sometimes get is, why do I bother marking up the Sanborn maps in the pixel editor? Why don't I just make a copy of what's in the Sanborn map and move it directly into SketchUp and work off of that, like you do in a lot of other 3D CAD programs when you set something on the workspace plane. And the reason for that is largely that the maps, the original maps, as I pointed out before, old paper, humidity, weather, sunshine, getting jostled about in the fire truck, they're no longer exactly square or rectangular. They weren't flat exactly when they were photographed, and so things don't necessarily translate so well when you're working directly off the lines. And I'll show you what I mean. By just taking the rectangle line here, I can come in and say, well, where is the beginning here? It's, well, maybe it's right there, and come over here and say, how about that? And I get a face, and I go from here up to there. I can do that, and from here over to there, and back to there, and back to there, and erase a few lines as if I had done it exactly like the structure is. And yeah, it's kind of the same. And you come down here and you say, well, it didn't quite line up here, so is that a big deal? Well, maybe not. But look what I've got here. I've got a line right here that is 307 feet 11 and 19/32 inches long. This line on this wall is 203 feet 6 and 29/64 inches long. This one up here across the top is 369 4 and 9/32 inches long. And you know, so you go, well, why is that a big deal? I'll tell you, having fractional dimensions in here can cause a lot of problems down the road. This wall that runs across the top line, 4 and 9/32 inches. If you're working with architecture elements that are identical across the length of the wall, you want to be running across a space that's not 369 feet 4 and 9/32 inches long. You want to run across a wall that's 370 feet. And conversely, this one down the side, you don't want 76 feet 11 and 47/64. You want 77 feet or 80 feet. It will be much, much easier later on, whether you're messing around with textures or adding 3D features. It will always be easier if these dimensions are in full integer increments, something like 75 feet or 80 feet or 310 feet, anything but feet, inches, and fractional inches. And so for that reason, I strongly recommend against using this technique of trying to build off of the lines. See if I can find another good reason for that. Say you don't want to use, you're not going to use the squares, and you say, I'm just going to draw the pencil in some lines, and you come out here, and you come out here, and here's the vertical line, and you say, you can see the axis turns green. It goes right up there, and you're thinking, oh, but that's not where I should be. I really should be, let's see if it's going to cooperate here. I really should be over there. Okay, well, now in addition to this being 3 3/4, 189 3 3/4 inches long, it's no longer a right angle down here. And that too can cause you problems. So take your time and do the dimensioning in your photo editor, your pixel editor. Rough out the dimensions in whole feet and simply transcribe that into Sketchup. It doesn't take very long to do, and over time you'll find that having these things in integer feet is a real godsend, and I can't emphasize that enough. The other thing about using the image directly out of Sanborn maps and putting it into a flat thing like this is you've got to figure out how to dimension it. I had to sit here and get in here and say, well, it looks like it's about right there, and this ruler is about 200 feet and is if I scale it right there, I get 199 8 and 15/64. You know, well, is that good enough? Maybe it is, but the other dimension's a different one. So in the end, this image, which looks, you know, pretty good, worked out to be some strange. It's 840 feet across and 668 feet long. Well, I didn't know that going into it. It had to be done strictly trial and error by measuring these two rulers and scaling the image differently until I got something where that looked pretty close to, if I went from here to here, it would be 200 feet. All right. I think I wasted my time doing that, and it's just not the way I approach these problems anymore. I tried it a couple times in the very beginning when I was using SketchUp, and I had so many problems because things weren't at right angles or they were at odd lengths. I realized early on, don't do it that way, and so I don't.